of, I've been in this role for over 10 years. And I want to thank once again everyone who came out this morning. In addition, I want to send a special thank you to um, our co-chairs, Roz Merriman, Emiko Mishima, and Denny Higgins. And thank you to our sponsors, County of Mercer, A Better Way, Seed Male Mentoring, United Front, Campaign to End Jim Crow, Living a Powerful Life, and TCNJ. Specifically at TCNJ, Bruniate and Kyle Rich, who will be running our platform for this entire panel discussion and also for the conference. I want to send an extra special thanks to two individuals who have been a part of the task force as far as trying to make sure that we kind of reconfigure the task force and also restructure the task force, and also has been a part of the process of bringing TCNJ on board. And that is Adam Sibley, who will soon be Dr. Adam Sibley shortly. And also the late, great Pat Donahue, for which, if it wasn't for Pat, TCNJ will not be a part of this process with the Mercer County Reentry Task Force. So thank those two especially for that process. I want to give you a little bit of background about the Reentry Task Force, our mission, which is to build a safer and more just Mercer County through advocacy, awareness building, and collaborative action. Our vision: homegoers returning to Mercer County will have the resources, guidance, and support to break the cycle of crime, achieve personal fulfillment, and strengthen their communities. A brief history about the task force: the Mercer County Reentry Task Force is a subcommittee of the Human Service Advisory Council. The group began in 2006 as a Mercer County Offender Partnership. It changed its name in 2009 when it was connected to the county's planning body for human services. The task force conducted focus groups of current and formerly incarcerated individuals to ascertain their needs and learn gaps in the existing systems of service. Members of the task force advocated for the passage of landmark reentry legislation, which was signed into law in 2010. The task force produced a document titled Challenges for Prisoner Reentry in New Jersey. In 2013, the task force instituted a new working group structure with the aim of improving reentry efforts in 6 key issues: education and training, employment and job creation, housing and social services, health and substance abuse, community support and mentoring, and justice and corrections. With administrative and research support from staff members and interns from the College of New Jersey, the group has been gradually expanding. In 2005, the task force began organizing several initiatives, including a statewide conference of county reentry task forces, which will enable collaboration between each other counties. The task force has also recently added to its personal through its participation in the AmeriCorps Vista program. I am happy to announce that today, as of today, we will be changing the name of the Mercer County Reentry Task Force. It will no longer be called the Mercer County Reentry Task Force. It will be called the Mercer County First Entry Task Force. For anyone who knows me and knows my perspective and knows the task force perspective when it comes to the title change, the reason why is this. For most individuals returning home from incarceration, this isn't reentry. This is their first entry. This is their first time being a part of society for whatever reason, whether it's because of mental health, substance abuse, or the fact that they just were not a part of society itself. So for most of them, this is their first access into being into society. That's why it's important for us to always accept them and not focus on the mistakes they made in their past. So I'm happy to announce once again, Mercer County Reentry Task Force will be officially changing its name to the Mercer County First Entry Task Force for that reason. With that said, I would like to go through the agenda and begin with our service providers. I'm going to have our first service provider give their input and thoughts and ideas on some of the things they're doing. And that will be Mr. Steve Kay. So if we can get Mr. Steve Kay's microphone muted so he can talk about what he's representing and what organization he's a part of, and how that organization wants to give opportunities to individuals who have been previously incarcerated. So with that said, Steve Kay.
Good morning. How's everyone doing? Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Well, it is an honor to be here. I appreciate everyone joining this morning. I'm happy to be here to discuss Wood Services and what we have to offer. Wood Services, I'll give you everyone a little bit of a background. Wood Services has been around for over 100 years. We started in special education, and throughout the years, we've grown, morphed, and kind of acquired organizations to become who we are today, which is Wood Services. We sit in the nonprofit sector, and we provide population health management services to adults and children with physical and intellectual disabilities. We met Perry several months ago as we continued to reach out and try to develop ourselves as a reentry provider. We are very excited to do so. We're working with a number of organizations as we try to continue to help individuals build a career. So we are happy to be a partner. We have a number of different opportunities, but I'll hop back to kind of the core of what we do. So we sit in Langhorne, Pennsylvania, and we provide four main services. We provide residential, educational, recreational, and vocational services to the individuals in which we serve, which if you think about it, we're about 1,500 employees at the moment, which is a little low for us. We're actively recruiting, but being a campus-based environment, we have every type of opportunity available, whether it's from maintenance, direct support, food and nutrition, clinical, education, you name it, we have opportunities. We have over 250 opportunities at the moment. And depending on, obviously, regulations, we can place somebody into any of those opportunities. Where we've been most successful in targeting reentry individuals has been our maintenance and food and nutrition program, but that doesn't mean that we are limited to those two verticals. So we are excited to reach out. We're excited to speak with individuals, and we're excited to get this going. Perry asked me to kind of speak about some of the charges we can accept from an employer standpoint. We can accept a number of charges. Everything is evaluated on a case-by-case basis. We obviously we're funded by, our regulation agencies that are placing individuals within our facility. So it really does come down to a case-by-case basis. But what I will say is we have a little bit more leniency than most. Given the nature of our organization and the fact that we have different regulations for different programs. With that being said, we really are a career opportunity. And I think that is the one thing I really want to touch upon is we're not just a job. We're not just another employer out there that is going to offer you, a Monday through Friday position. You come in, you clock your hours, and you go home. We are growth oriented. Education oriented, and we really have what I feel is a strong opportunity for individuals within our organization. Some of the benefits of working with Woods are a health insurance policy that doesn't cost the employee anything. It's 100% company funded. We have a 403B retirement plan that has a company contribution and match after 1 year. We have continuing education as well as student loan repayment. So anyone looking to further their education, whether that be at the bachelor's, associate, or master's level, we provide that all at a discounted cost. And you can take advantage of our student loan repayment if that's an avenue that you decide to go down to provide, financial payment for those classes. Those are just a few to start, but we really do have a strong offering, and it is our goal as an employer, since I've taken on this position, to really become inclusive with the individuals in which we're working with, not only on a clinical, residential, recreational, and educational side, but also with the employees that we're hiring. So we are very excited to be a part of this, and at that point, I'll open it up if I have any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Steve?
Hello, Steve.
Yes.
Did you talk about absolutely the things that that will allow a person not to get hired? Like, so I'm hearing about you do hire, but it's a little subjective, and I'm just wondering, what are some of the things absolutely not, and what are some of the things that a lot of people had, but you may hire them still?
Sure. So I'll start with, I guess, our disqualifiers. So anything that borders on multiple felonies. So usually 2 to 3 felony counts, depending on the grade, would be a disqualification. A lot of times we see, murder, automatic, disqualification. Anything with regard to child safety is usually a disqualification. So if someone is reported to the child line and was convicted, those individuals we usually cannot move forward with just based on the services that we provide. Those are kind of the big two. We really are lenient. DUIs, minor drug charges, simple assaults, depending on how many and how frequent, I guess, is typically what would make or break those individuals. But those charges we see on a day-to-day: DUI, minor drug charges, simple assault, petty theft. Those are all usually pretty acceptable by us, especially in the certain programs in which we have more leniency, like our food and nutrition and maintenance. Those programs that don't have funding agencies coming in on a weekly, monthly, and yearly basis, we have a little bit more flexibility to put someone in there that might need, a second chance or a first chance.
I think Pastor Karen Hernandez has a question. Pastor Karen, you have a question?
Okay, I can unmute now. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. I just wanted to say that I would love to organize a group of us to visit your campus. I think seeing things cara a cara, face to face, will inspire us to partner more strongly with your program.
Absolutely. I know Perry and myself have been speaking about this for what feels like forever now. It's definitely a goal and initiative of both of us to do so. And it's great to hear from you again, Pastor Karen. We can absolutely make that happen. We could tour the grounds, maybe get into a couple of the facilities and really get an understanding. I think what's so powerful about Wood Services is we really are a campus environment. It's a gorgeous, we have a gorgeous campus, and when you see just what's going on, it makes you want to be a part of it. I think people that really have a true understanding and a mission to what they're doing typically work out very well here. So yeah, we can absolutely make that happen.
So what I will commit to today is setting up so we can visit your facility after the 4th.
Great.
About 2 weeks. And I will send out a alert to everyone on our emailer list about if they would like to tour with us. The more the merrier, please. But we're also going to focus on the fact that we're still getting through a pandemic. So we're going to be as safe as possible. Even if you have been vaccinated or not, we want to make sure that everyone's safety is first and foremost when we do tour this facility. And once again, this is very important to the population we serve. We have a question from one of our young people. The age requirement to work at Wood Services as well, because you have a lot of young adults who like to pursue a job, but because of their age, they feel like they might not be able to work there.
Absolutely. So I will go on record and say that 90% of our openings are 18 years or older. With that being said, we do have flexibility to go under that on any program that is not highly regulated. So we have actually been opening the conversation as recently as Friday of considering anyone under that for our food and nutrition program, but it would be very specific to certain positions. So our utility position, which is our commercial dishwashing, we can do that. And we'd probably be able to evaluate a maintenance one grounds role, which is just like a general labor role within our maintenance department.
Thank you once again, Steve. You'll be hearing from us very soon. We are greatly appreciative of you wanting to partner with the task force, and the task force look forward to continuing
Absolutely.
with you as well.
I see a comment in the chat here from Wanda about, was that geared towards me, Wanda? Well, I'll address it quickly anyway. The comment says, there's a concern with fees attached to training, the heavy burden of loans. How can the services be provided? So if you're speaking towards our education that we provide for all of our employees, we actually have a dedicated individual who works with funding. So they will work with individuals on getting state funding, any kind of funding that they're eligible for to drive down the cost of tuition for any higher education. So they will work to ensure that there's no stone unturned with regards to ensuring that the educational services that you're completing with Wood Services are at the cheapest possible tuition cost, which would then be the smallest amount of loans that you would be taking out on that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That answers my question.
Good.
And Steve, there was one more that came in the Q&A. Is your program county specific?
Is our program county specific? Can you clarify that for me?
Yes, and I apologize, everybody. It takes me 1 second to allow people that are attendees to chat. So Jade, can you share a little bit more about your question?
Hi, yes, I was asking because I run a reentry program in 3 separate counties in New Jersey, and I just was asking if like any one of them would be able to apply to your services, or is it specific to like Mercer or PA or?
Got it. Not at all. We are open to partnering with anyone. So it's, an initiative of mine to spread, the organization's wings as far as we can. We have openings. I truly, in my heart, I believe that we really do have something special to offer individuals. So I think that it's a great partnership, and I'm happy to partner with any organization that's interested in placing people with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was one of the things that we were especially interested in partnering with Wood Services about, was the fact that they were looking to partner with anyone and everyone that has been affected by incarceration as well. It wasn't just specific. One of the last questions from our young adults was, if a person is not qualified to work at Wood Services, do you have any connections to refer them to an entity that might be able to work with them because of their charge?
Great question. I can actually reach out to a couple of contacts of mine and see if they'd be interested. One that initially comes to mind is manufacturing. I know that they are not under some of the regulations that we are as population and behavioral health. So while I might not have an immediate answer, I will go on the record and make a commitment to everyone on this call that I will reach out to a couple of individuals I've worked with and had connections with to see if maybe I can foster another relationship. I'd be happy to do that.
Once again, thanks, Steve. Look forward to
Absolutely.
talking to you soon, and enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye now.
Bye. We're going to move on to our next provider. That is Jeanette Rizek. Jeanette Rizek will be our next service provider.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me but not see me?
Yes.
Is my camera staying off?
Yes.
You should be able to try one more time, Jeanette.
We can see you now, but we can't hear you. There you go. There you go.
Sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. Workwell is very happy to be part of the first entry task force. We joined about 2 months ago, and I'm on this call with Terry Truitt, one of our newest consultants working with us, and I think many of you know her already. I'm also really happy to follow Steve's introduction because we piggyback really well on the work that he's doing with providing training, pre-job training for returning citizens. We just completed our first general training. Our background is in culinary job training for returning citizens. And we have, during the pandemic, we decided to expand and do general job training. So I will be sending out a flyer that everyone can use, and that gives a summary of the work we do. It's a 4-week general training, and we've partnered with Uplift Workforce Solutions in Philadelphia. They have been working for many years in this line of work and have a really high success rate that we hope to be replicating in Trenton. We are based in the First Presbyterian Church in downtown Trenton, and we have working with several partners. We are about to preparing and ramping up for the next course, which will be in September. So we're starting to accept applicants. We take 20 people per course and have 20 on a waiting list. During the course, our participants will be getting support from wraparound services. We partner with the United Way. So everything from housing to food support to helping getting a driver's license are just some of the things that we help our participants with. And then we are also partnering with employers so that at the completion of the course, they can either enter into an apprenticeship that we place them in so that they can then be placed in a job. We are partnering with a construction company, and we're also in conversations with Wood Services, with Steve, and also hoping to restart the culinary training. We also provide free lunches during the training and bus passes for those who need it. And I think that's a good summary. We also do other activities as a group. We have just completed a Q&A with several board members who are also returning citizens, and I'm happy to share that link for anyone who would like to learn a bit more about our work. So I think that's a quick and dirty summary of what we do. If there are any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Jeanette? Okay, once again, does anyone have any questions for Jeanette?
Yes, I have a question.
Please go ahead.
My question is for individuals who are first entry, we're using that phrase first entry, returning back home. Is there someone in your organization who can assist them with getting their license? For instance, some of the individuals come out with the barber, license or skills or training or beautician or auto body. I don't know all the menu of, licensing. I've been away from it for a while. I was involved in the criminal justice system in terms of reentry initiatives years ago. But I'd like to know, is there someone who can help navigate the individuals who are at the point of where they need to get a state license, but yet they need to have someone help them advocate, help them get through that process? Is that something that you're finding? I know years ago, it was a barrier where individuals got the training inside of the prison. And when they came out, they were trying to get their official state license as barbers and beauticians and various areas. And in the areas of the construction trades, how is that being addressed? Or is that something that you do?
That's a really good and interesting point. We have not looked into that, but I'm definitely putting that down as something to address. So far, we have not been confronted with that, but thank you for that important input.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So someone.
I just want to say that for a lot of individuals who are returning home, the one stop tends to be a location that tends to help out in a lot of different areas. I know depending upon what area you live in, some one stops are a little more well equipped and have additional more services than others. And so I know that for most individuals, the one stop, no matter what county you're in, tends to be an area that can assist them. I always believe that you never have enough to assist our population returning home. But I do see that for a lot of individuals, one stop can be a place or an area that can tend to help point them in the right direction. Once again, I will say it again, it shouldn't only be the one stop. There should be more agencies. I think that what's out there now, we need to have even more, because you can never have enough services to assist returning citizens who are coming home. Because when it comes down to it, we forget that they're coming home, but they didn't just serve their time alone. Majority of them are coming home to families. And so even though they were locked up, their family was locked up as well, because time for them stopped, things for them stopped, and now they have to readjust as well. And so once again, one stop is a great aspect, but we need to have more. Are there any more questions?
Absolutely.
I want to thank you, Jeanette, for jumping on this. I know you have a busy schedule and you have a few other things that you have to get done as well, but thank you so very much for joining in and joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So we're going to go to our last service provider. I do believe it might be a 1, 2, 3, or just a 1-2 punch. We have Pastor Karen Hernandez, and we have the utility man, Mr. Jock Howard, who will be presenting. I know them both very well, and they both do a lot of great things in the community, in the city, and throughout the state. So with that said, Jock Howard and Pastor Karen Hernandez, the floor is yours.
Buenos dias, I'm Pastor Karen Hernandez Granson. It's great to connect with all of you. I'm trying to see you all, and my Zoom is acting up here. Okay, here we go. So I will start and then invite Jacques to continue. Westminster Presbyterian Church has been seeking the shalom, the peace, the paz, the assalamu alaikum, the pyongwa of the city. And recently we've been called to become, together with Nassau Presbyterian Church, to become a 1K church. And we did a 5-week Bible study where we were taught by scripture that churches are called to positively impact their local economy. And so after that series, we had to decide to whom are we going to provide micro business loans? And we looked at the different possibilities, and we all felt strongly that first entry returning citizens needed this kind of support. And so basically, we're excited that both Westminster and Nassau had members, including Jacques, that donated generously. So we have a fund to provide micro business loans. We're still dotting the I's and crossing the T's. But this is what we're gonna do, and I'll let Jacques jump in.
Greetings, everyone, and thank you, Pastor Karen, for that. Many of you on the call I know, and you know me from my work with Trenton 365. But the idea of Trenton 365 has always been about networking and bringing people together of all different backgrounds to build a community that they want. Worshiping at Westminster Presbyterian Church, one of our main goals, as Karen has said, is seeking the shalom of the city, the peace of the city, and being located in what is known as the section, and many folks from Trenton know that this is an area that has been systemically deprived and has gone through lots of challenges. Knowing this from how our faith center works in the community, we understand some of the needs of the community. And when this opportunity came for us through the 1K Churches initiative to come up with an economic plan to do church, so to speak, it was quickly understood that one of the things that we need to focus on is our citizens who have been incarcerated and working with their families in whatever way possible. And we are crossing the T's and dotting the I's and moving slowly, as good Presbyterians do. But in addition to that, we have a very strong team of folks who are going to be working with whomever it is we work with to ensure that they will have lots of opportunities to get understanding from the different skill sets that are on the team, but also to have the financial support, and then to also work with them to create marketing and media opportunities to share their story. Because one of the things that we feel is really important is that we control the narrative and tell our full story. So I'm looking forward to working with the First Entry Task Force of Mercer County, or Mercer County First Entry Task Force. I'll get that. And I also want to say that we are also willing to sit down, interview, and share any of the content so that we can make this an opportunity for more people to know what is going on. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you so very much to Jacques and to Pastor Karen. Are there any questions? Please ask questions, because when Pastor Karen had told me about this initiative that they're looking to do, I was so very happy, because I was having a conversation with multiple individuals and this was a topic of discussion. So she and I talked for a long period of time. So I won't ask any more questions because I still have a ton. So please, please ask all of the questions you would like to ask about this topic. I know we have a few.
I have a question.
What's your
Can you
question?
hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Yolanda.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Hi.
Hola.
Hola. Like my question is for women. A lot of the women are being, that come home are being turned away from certain jobs. You know what I mean? So a lot of women now are becoming entrepreneurs. So I think that this program that you have is amazing, because it gives that woman that other side, that other push, because when you look at the research, they're only helping men. You know what I mean? They don't really help a lot of women. They feel as though we can make it. We know how to survive. We know how to make it happen for ourselves, but sometimes we really don't. I think that programs like this, because it's coming from the heart, that it will be able to help a young mother, come home, to be able to start a business. You know what I mean? That she's able to help her family without anyone looking at her cross-eyed. You know what I'm saying? Like, not judging her about her kids, where she come from. Because I truly believe that when I heard y'all talking about this, it went through my soul and my spirit, because you're taking the barrier away of the shame. You know what I mean? The hurt, the embarrassment. You know what I mean? So I applaud this program. Whatever I could do to help, keep it in the forefront, because as women, even if we don't be incarcerated, we still looking like we've been incarcerated, because it's like we still have shackles, and no one seems to see these invisible shackles on us. So I think with a program like this, you'll be able to help more women not go back into the system.
Yolanda, we need you. We need you because you have access to the women that have returned, that are formerly incarcerated. So you can help us by making references. I can lift up one of our own. Most of you know Stephanie Register. Stephanie Register is a returning citizen, but from First Entry, but from decades ago, right? And now she's a senior, or I always get her title confused.
Community planner.
Right, so she's up there and works for the city, but she has a history that she's not embarrassed of. Not only, is recovery is essential for those who have struggled with alcoholism or drugs, but she has a history of being incarcerated. So she's part of our network that's going to mentor these men and women. So thank you,
Absolutely.
Yolanda, because you made the emphasis that we need folks like you for us to have access to potential applicants.
Whatever I can do, I'll be, more than I'm willing to help. And when you mentioned Stephanie, see, people need to understand also that when a woman is going through something, she has friends by her side who may not be doing the things that she's doing, but she's there. And I remember, and I tell the story to anybody, I was in those dark hallways with her. You understand what I'm saying? So I know the belly of the beast, even though I may not partake, but I was there. Because sometimes we had to be in those places, those dark places with the people that we love to make sure that they're okay.
Amen.
So please continue to do what you do. I got 5 on it.
Awesome. Mhm.
So with that said, once again, Jacques and also Pastor Karen, the First Entry Task Force is happy, elated, ecstatic, joyed. I don't know what the words to use.
Awesome.
To be able to partner with you on this process. Pastor Karen, you know how I feel about you personally. Brother Jacques, we go back when we both had a head full of hair. But with that said, this is important. We wanted to make sure that when we did this part of the conference, that we hit all avenues. We wanted to hit employment. We wanted to hit training, and we wanted to hit the entrepreneurship and small business loans as well. Because for a lot of people who are returning home from incarceration, those 3 things tend to be or feel like it's outside of their reach. And this right here is about the humanization of the returning citizen, not the dehumanization that they've been used to dealing with while being incarcerated or when they return home. This is about humanizing them and saying, once again, we see you.
Amen.
For you. We're not here to judge you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. So one last question. We have a young person who's asking a pertinent question. And I think that you guys will be willing to answer that, which is going to be important. And I know the answer will already be, but I think it's important for our young people to hear this as well, because we have a lot of young people who are at this conference tuning in as well. Their question is, will counseling services be offered as a part of this program?
Well, before Karen, before you answer, I'd like to chime in and say, first of all, to the young folks, thank you for spending some time with the prunes like me. Some of us are really trying to provide opportunities for your voice to be heard from you. So thank you for speaking up and being a part of this. It's very important. Tell your friends and other folks younger than you to be a part of these processes as well. Again, from my perspective, this is going to be a very much a hands-on relationship. And we're thinking long-term relationships. When I do the interviews, I like to often say, I don't like doing one-off interviews. I want you to come back. I want to know what's going on in your world. I want to know how I can help. And that's the same mindset that we're having with the 1K Churches program through Westminster Presbyterian Church. This is not going to be you show up, you check some boxes, and you're off on your own. That's not what this plan is. This plan is that we're going to be with you through success. We've had some conversations about, there may be some unsuccessful opportunities just because we have to think about that. But we've committed as a team to see this through to success. So as long as the recipients are working and willing to work with us, we're going to continue to work with them to make sure that this is a success, and we're going to tell everybody about it.
I would say, so on the one hand, we're going to counsel with professional business people on how to be a good entrepreneur. But if Zenobia was referring to mental health counseling, we don't have that as part of our program, but I'm ecstatic that there's a multicultural counseling center in Ewing, New Jersey, and the Dr. Natalie Edmond, African-American, and Reverend Nadira Keaton and other people of color are available for counseling.
Mm-hmm.
I think all that you both have mentioned is so very important. And I think that you guys have mentioned prior about that peer counseling as well, because individuals need to see a success story or someone they know that has gone through this process. For some, it may seem, okay, I have an idea, but the issue is, how do I put that idea on paper? And how do I put it on paper and then make it a plan? And how do I make it from a plan to make it a business plan? And then how do I continuously be successful at it? Because they have to understand that not everything you try will be a success. There may be some trials and tribulations, some stumbles, but you got to dust yourself off and keep it going. And I think by having that support system and by having great people like yourselves there is going to be the factor that's going to make it even more successful.
So there's a question, can you speak to the process of applying to the program? Terry, we're gonna need Perry Shaw to connect us with anyone that's on this call so that we can follow up. When I said, and Jacques said, we're still dotting the I's and crossing the T's, we were referring to the fact that we don't have an application written yet. So we're still in process. The money is there and the commitment is there. We need to prepare the application process.
And Perry, that actually brings me to my question for you and for the panelists. Working and keeping a list of everybody here, would it be okay with those that shared, if you share your contact info, we can share it out with the group in a follow-up email. And all of the wonderful things being added into the chat as well. We'll make sure to put a copy of those here. So we have the patient navigator for the Mercer Council Opioid Overdose Recovery Program. And Jade is from Oaks Integrated Care and shared some information as well. So anybody that has additional things, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll compile them and share them out after, in addition to sharing contact information.
Definitely, definitely. It's important to continuously have that collaborative effort. Once again, Jacques, Pastor Karen, thank you so very much.
Awesome. That's great.
All right. So with that said, we're going to move through our agenda and our program. We're going to move to our first panel discussion. We're going to have the panel that's going to be moderated by Mr. Stacy Heading. I want to give you a little bit of background on Mr. Heading. I'm going to read it professionally as if I don't know Mr. Heading, even though I have a great relationship with him. For anyone who doesn't know Stacy, he's a great guy. Stacy does a lot for the community. I'm still trying to figure out how he duplicates himself so much to be everywhere at any given time. So with that said, Stacy Heading is the Youth Services and Outreach Manager for ISLE's Youth Build Institute. He's a Trenton native and is heavily involved with designing unique and various workshops to aid in the self-development of today's youth. Stacy is a certified life coach and program director of Servants Enduring to Empower and Develop, SEED, male mentoring program. He is also the founder of Heal the City, whose focus is on building positive community efforts. Stacy attended DeVry University as a graduate of Dale Carnegie training program. Outside of work, Stacy serves as a deacon at True Love Center and enjoys spending time with his grandson. Joining Stacy today are panelists Jennifer Montesero, Kyle Anderson, and Miss Zenobia Shaw. Once again, this is our youth panel. Stacy, the floor is yours.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good, good. Oh man, you did that bio some justice. It wasn't too long. It was like it was just enough. Matter of fact, send that over to me so I can, if the bio have to be read again, it could go just like that. So it's really a pleasure to be here again. My name is Stacy Heading. I am the program director of the Seed Male Mentoring Program. I'm also a founder of Heal the City Trenton. One of the main things we're kind of known for is our billboard campaign, putting up positive billboards and images and using people in the community to be a part of it. We also, we go into the schools and we use it as a service learning project. So whatever billboard or whatever theme that we're going to use, oftentimes we educate the young people that's going to be a part of it, like an 8-week program or 10-week program, and then they design the billboards and then they go up. Most recently is the billboards on vaccines. And Kyle was a part of it. He's on here with me. He is going to be a sophomore at Clark Atlanta University. So yes, he was working with us through this whole process while he was away in Atlanta in college. But luckily now with virtual things, we're able to do these things from people far and near. So and also it's a great pleasure to have Zoe on here, Zoe Shaw. Zoe, can I hear you? Can I hear your voice?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there you go. All right. And then the other is Jennifer, correct?
Jennifer.
Say it again. Jennifer.
Jennifer. In addition, I forgot one young lady. I apologize. You have Arimi, who will also be on the panel.
Arimi. Okay. So my young people, we're going to get into this. And I'm going to start off with this question, and please feel free to jump in, and we're going to just have some dialogue. I have some great young people on here. One time I was telling Bridget before, I said, I like when I'm talking about violence and crime in the city, or youth incarceration, trauma, things like that, what we're going to talk about today. Sometimes I like to get people and young people who were able to bypass these things, because now you're going to hear from their perspective on what they had to do to go around these barriers that really kind of grip us up in the community. And in their talking, you'll hear about some of the things that they had to go around. And sometimes with these group of people I like to bring, they don't sensationalize the story and get everybody caught up. So this is all real, and these are young people that are trying to do better and voices and leaders in the community. But I do have a question, and anyone can start off and ask this. And I want to ask, how do you think incarceration affects the young people in the community, around the world, in the country, or some that you may know? How do you think incarceration affects young people?
I'll go. I feel like incarceration, it takes away from like a kid's perspective, it takes away their friends, their families, and stuff like that, and like role models and people like that.
All right. Before someone else answers, I do want to throw in this tidbit that's very important. So while Kyle is home for the summer, he's also interning at the Mercer County Detention Center, which we all know as the workhouse. So he's there. And so Kyle, even working in administrative part with your grandmother, have you ever seen any of your friends come through intake or anything like that? What's that experience like?
Yes, I've seen several of my friends and kids who I grew up with in school and all that, play football with, stuff like that. And I see them like in there walking around. It's just, it doesn't look right, It's very sad to see people I grew up with and like that, and see the paths they took and paths I take in our different lives.
And my last question to you, what path did you take to avoid these things? Because I know you, Kyle, you're a good person. It's not like you think you're better, but you had to put yourself and make some decisions that not put you in those positions. And so what are some of the things that you've done?
I'll stay in the church, I played sports ever since 4th grade, basketball, football. And I stay in school and I stay at home. I don't really go out much often.
Okay. Keeping busy, right? So when we talk about keeping busy, I was talking to Perry earlier, and I said, I'm going to partner with your daughter and do some things. I know for Isles, I have an upcoming summer enrichment program that is just about done, y'all. I'm really been working hard to make sure that we provide our young people with, the tools and the things that they need. And I said, so, I'm going to lean heavily on your daughter. And he started just telling me all the things that she's a part of. I'm like, oh man, I got to try to squeeze her in. So Zoe, being a part of a lot of things and your internship and the things that you're doing, has that helped you escape from, getting caught up in some negative things?
Yes, because I spend most of my time in school and at home in a community, out in the streets with, with community. But it doesn't take away from the fact that I see the negative sides and my friends and my family being, arrested and going through some difficult times. So it has its positive and its negatives being in the streets and sometimes not being available.
Great, great. Yennefer or Arima, could y'all want to add on to that?
As for the first question, I was gonna say, wait, my mind went blank. I'm sorry. As for the first question, I was gonna say like when you like witness like a lot of violence, you tend to like kind of like do what you see. So if all you're seeing is negative stuff, then you're gonna kind of become negative. And although it really does help to like have other things going on and have programs out there, I think that like seeing violence every day is kind of like really impactful. And especially if most of your friends around are like, selling drugs and stuff like that, you tend to get caught up in it. So,
Yeah, yeah. If I put on Pastor Hernandez, you'll like this, but I use this scripture a lot. I am a deacon, at my church, and there's a lot of biblical practices that I put in when I'm talking to young people. But speaking on what you were saying, the scripture in Corinthians says, evil communications corrupt good manners. So I talk about that a lot because if you are around stuff enough, you will become that. So much so, if you get a little deeper into it, if you're around it enough, you'll start doing things normally you wouldn't do, but you'll think you're okay because you're not as worse as them, right? So if they're running around robbing and stealing and doing things like that, because you are around them and getting caught up and doing little negative things, but you may not go as far, but just being around that will have you doing things normally you wouldn't do. And so that's why that evil communications corrupt good manners is so important, because if you're around it, you definitely won't be yourself, right? And Remy, is there anything you want to add on to that? You're on mute.
I think you hit that perfectly. Like I was saying, like you start to become who you're around and you don't even notice. So I think it's also very important to not just make sure you keep yourself busy, but also have friends who are doing the right things. And at least if they're not doing the right things, they're not also like dragging you into that. And they're just like, this is my stuff. I'm going to keep it over here, but this has nothing to do with you. Because there are people who like drag you down with them.
There are people that what? Say that again.
Who tend to like drag you down with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I add a comment?
Yes.
So among the Latine, or some of you might use Latinx community, there's an idiom. Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres. Tell me who you're walking with, and I'll tell you who you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very good. And so let me say this. So when I look at my young people, we talk about trauma, right? Deep-rooted things that's inside from experience that happen that may come up later, and even based on the things that you have seen. In your community, have you watched or seen anybody that they suffer from trauma, or have any of you guys suffer from some sort of trauma?
Sometimes, people suffer from trauma of like parents and all that. It's like deep rooted in they brain and all that stuff. So like trauma with parents, friends, family, seeing people get killed and stuff like that. That's also trauma. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I even watch what we see, y'all, on social media and the things I'm talking about. We might, young people now are seeing people get killed on camera or video, or really get assaulted, right? With like blunt trauma, like getting hit with a pipe or something like that. And I watch a lot of young people and they can take it and they can watch these things, you know, and sometimes they may try to bring it to me like, oh, I can't watch that. What is going on with that? How is it now that we could just kind of see these things and it's almost like a norm?
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
I feel like, sorry, I was having technical difficulties. I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of us are desensitized nowadays.
Yes.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of, going back to the trauma part, I've seen a lot of my classmates, my peers that go through this stuff, and they think it's the norm, you know? I feel like that's something that we need to work on.
And watch this, Jennifer. Not only do they think it's the norm, it's really kind of cool, right?
Excuse me?
Some people really think it's cool, like it's hip,
Yeah.
it's cool to, you know, to be like that.
Yeah, it's horrible seeing how many people can just take all this, you know, violence and internalize it, and it's damaging to their mental health, and people don't realize it.
Right. Absolutely. And you know, you guys, and some of that stuff, it plays out later and it plays out in their behavior, right? And so we have to understand that. So Zoe, anything you want to add to our conversation?
Especially in being in the urban community, you experience trauma at a very young age. So as you get older, you see things, it's kind of normal. It's being normalized, especially in this generation. You see a lot of stuff either at your home, online, you know, especially with being African American, you see a lot of things going on. And just being like a woman, you see a lot of things going on. So you just kind of take to notice like things are going to happen in my future, but I understand now how to react to it and how to respond to it. So
Absolutely. That was great what you just said, how to react and how to respond to it. You know, oftentimes I do workshops, and when I'm talking to young people like yourself who are in and around and a part of the community, but you decide to do better, there also is a flip side that I start to talk about, and it's about having a voice and being a leader and start trying to sway people, you know, to not do those things, but do it in a way with humility, right? Because you don't want to come off as if you're better. Because when you know, Kyle, have you gone through that? Like going away to college, right now you're in Clark, Atlanta, and so you've been down there and you come home. Do you go through that where friends think that you're better now, or you know, you're not all that, or you know, how does that go?
Yeah. Sometimes you know, be like, you think you better than everybody sometimes, stuff like that. It's nothing too serious, but it's like
Right.
You know, let's talk about it a little bit, you know.
Yeah, like you say, Kyle, it's not too serious, but at least you know it's in the back of your head, like he kind of have a problem with that. So I'm not going to over brag about it. Like I'm not going to just, you know, talk too much about it, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so in some workshops and some things I do, especially when I used to do workshops years ago at Upward Bound, where you had young people right there from the urban area, but they were preparing for college. So they're going to school on a Saturday to do work when some are just, you know, walking around and not motivated and not doing anything. And so we used to do little tools to kind of, you know, in your humility, like, let me bring you over to where I'm at. Like you can do it too. You know what I'm saying? And witnessing, we'll say, if he did it for me, he'll do it for you. And that lets a person know that we're together. It's not just me, but he'll also do it for you. And that is kind of sometimes what we have to do with our friends. Those of you that are on the line, our young leaders, you have to find a way to, without putting yourself in harm, but to bring them in and to make them feel comfortable and win them in your world. Because Kyle, as you said earlier, it hurts as you're working at the workhouse, at the detention center, and to see friends you grew up with that had the talent, the skills to be successful, and they're locked up. You know? And we have to understand that. And we have to understand when we talk about youth incarceration, it becomes a vicious cycle. Now, some of the things I know, because through ILS, I work and I partner with the probation department, right? And it is the youth probation department. And so when they get caught up at 12 and 13 years old, if they don't have someone to save them or not only mentor to them, but also to give them the tools to say, I don't want to live like this, because they have to be motivated not to get back in trouble again. Because once you get in trouble, it's easier to continue to get in trouble because you get used to being locked up, reporting to your probation officer, and that becomes a way of life. Has anyone ever seen one of their friends who got caught up early and they just continue to stay getting caught up in the jail system?
I haven't seen people get caught up in the jail system more as like knowing the police officers because they've been, getting in trouble a lot and getting arrested. But far as like going to jail itself, the person wasn't my friend, but the person went to my school, and we saw him like one day, and then we didn't see him until the next school year. And when he came back, he was quiet, but he was still like troubling, and that was kind of upsetting because this was like in middle school time, so I'm thinking like when you go during that time, you supposed to change your attitude. But now that I'm older, I realize that sometimes that doesn't even help. It makes it 10 times worse to make you more aggravated and more upset.
Right. Absolutely. Anyone else?
Yeah, I had a friend in middle school, and he used to be not necessarily in and out of the jail system, but he used to get involved with the police a lot. And I found that the reason why he kept doing the same things over and over again is because he wasn't having the proper support system and the things that he needed. So he felt the need to go back to the streets, because in his mind, the streets had him, but at home it wasn't necessarily like that.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. You guys, and the people that are on this line listening, it's rough out there, and I know I'm in and around these things, and I make sure that I put my ear to the ground so I can kind of see what is going on. And I see things have changed since the pandemic. And so when things started opening up, I was just able to get out and get about. And because of COVID and the thing that happened, it has changed people who already may have had a negative attitude and no mentor to take them to a whole nother entire level of dysfunction. And so let me ask y'all this. Have y'all seen anything different now that we're starting to, outside is opening up, and you're starting to see the behaviors of people being back around people? Have you noticed anything different?
I think that there's definitely now, it's more of a hard time communicating with each other, because we were basically locked away in our houses for a year. So we kind of, at least I know I lost that communication skill a little bit. So now everybody's outside and we're kind of forced to communicate with each other. We don't have a computer screen to hide behind each other anymore. And it's now you guys have to communicate and be functional as a society. And some people don't know how to do that because they kind of lost those skills.
Right. That is great. That is great. Anyone else? Kyle, what's going on with you, man?
I don't really be going outside like that, but I be seeing I know a lot of people are getting in trouble now because everybody trying to go outside because they've been locked up for almost over a year. So people try and do a lot of stuff, do too much, and get locked up and all that. It's too much.
Right. Right. So for the panel, y'all, we have about 2-3 minutes left. I want you guys to just give me your thoughts on incarceration, right? What do you think about it? The trauma, the things you see, in your community, in youth incarceration. Give me your thoughts on it. Even if it's whatever you have to do to stay out of it, and you know, and whatever you're trying to do in your life to be successful. So who want to go first? This is almost your closing thoughts.
I think you gotta just change your surroundings, you know. Me personally, all my friends, we all either in college or trade school, so we all like trying to better ourselves for our families and everybody else, and our mindset, stuff like that, to be better.
Absolutely, Kyle. I can attest to that. Young ladies?
I think at times the incarceration system could be very dehumanizing, especially for kids. And I think it's important to acknowledge that yes, they did something wrong. And when you do something wrong, there are consequences. However, at the end of the day, still realize that they're human and that they do deserve to have a second chance once they finish their time, especially when we're talking about children.
Great. Awesome. Next.
I just wish that the process from getting out of jail or prison back into society was a little bit easier and less complicated and so long. I just wish that it would be, straightforward and just, with getting the assistance that they need, it won't be so troubling for them. So it'll be easier for them to be eased into society again.
Great. Yep.
Agree. I think it actually, especially considering that children aren't like fully developed, their brains aren't fully developed. I feel like children should just, it's really tough on their mental health and society not letting them get back into, a normal life. I think that's a real problem. Yeah.
Right. Well, in closing, as we wrap up, I think it'll be fitting. I know I see Wanda Stansberry, who is such a pillar in our community, have so much love for you. Do you feel that a mentor in your life will give you more support? And I'm sure it will. Like, I think I got to get ready to wrap up, Ms. Stansberry, and I'm going to talk to you a little later. I am a mentor personally for Kyle, who's away
Great.
in college. Yes.
Great.
Oh, I thought somebody said something.
No, I said great. I'm saying wonderful. Yeah, I'm so impressed with this young group of young people, and what I'm learning more is that if we could wrap around each one, mentors and coaches, the ones who are out there now leading need more support, and I just think that you're doing a magnificent job, Stacy, amazing. I just think right now we need to hold on to our young people over the long run. How can we do that?
Right. And let me say this, and this is why, again, as I was talking to Bridget about this before, I want people to hear about our young people that are doing positive things. And there's a lot more of them just like this, and they are around. But we got to, it's a word called highly motivated. And what happens is there are a lot of programs and things that are going on, but they have to be motivated or understand what they want in their life to be a part of it. So there are a percentage of young people that are taking advantage of these programs of the Gear Up, Smile Gear Up program, and the Boys and Girls Club, and the Seed Mail Mentoring program, and my Owls, the evening program, which is going to segue into, and I see Nikki Enders on here. We're all going to partner. I've been reaching out to people, and we're doing an evening enrichment program. So it's going to be in the summer, but I know a lot of kids work. So what we're going to do is have this program going on from 4 o'clock on, and it's about decreasing the violence in the city. And I'm in my mind, I'm naming it the Love, Peace, and Joy enrichment program. And we're going to have people dealing with like mental health, because honestly, if we're going to ask young people to kind of step up and become a leader, we got to start dealing with them internally, because they're going through a lot. So we're going to work on them with people like Kimmy Carlos, Baye Kemet, who's going to do the Peace Drumming Circle, peace painting, you know, and things that we're going to have them to open up, understand who they are, talk to their soul, touch them emotionally, and so that they can be able to get ready to lead the community. Now, this is not the most popular thing. That's why I use the word highly motivated, because it's going to be at 4 o'clock or 3:30. We will have some recreation going on, but I'm telling you, it's guaranteed to put the young person who comes involved in this on the right track to be successful. So,
Amen, amen.
amen,
Amen.
amen.
That's awesome. Yes.
So thank you, Perry, for allowing me this opportunity. I'll send the information to everyone once this get done. And I'm looking for y'all to send some young people our way.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, panel. I just want to add one more thing. I want to give the young ladies on the panel a quick shout out and some quick time to discuss something that they're involved in.
Amen.
An organization that they are doing an awesome job at. And I'll let whomever they feel should be the spokesperson to talk about the program that they have basically reignited, and that's making a big change in our city. That's focusing on youth violence, that's focusing on youth homelessness, that's focusing on trauma and mental health as well. So with that said, I'll just give them 1 minute to just quickly talk about the organization and what they're looking to do and what they have accomplished thus far.
Basically, as Mr. Shaw said, United Front, the organization which I am president of, is a youth-led organization that's based in Trenton that covers issues that he recently said that targets youth such as homelessness, violence, mental health, and helping to create a space for youth. We had events in the past such as homelessness drives, we have monthly meetings, support groups, and we're planning to have an anti-gun violence rally in July. So we're going to work on that, and we're going to call people and partner people with that event. So, yeah.
One other thing, what's the best way for youth who want to be a part of this process to get in contact with you? Because it's important that we spread the word. You have over 30 people on this conference, nearly 50. So what's the best way for them to get in contact with you? If you can put your information in the chat group so we can share that and make sure that more young people are aware of the positive things that's going on in the city.
Not a problem. I will put my email in the chat.
All right. Thank you so very much once again, young people. And thank you.
Perry, I just want to make a plug for them a little bit further. If you all are not already on their email list and want to get connected, I suggest you reach out. They're doing such a wonderful job. This is the little email that they sent recently about what's coming up. It's beautiful. They're doing wonderful work. I just wanted to show off a little bit for you all, because it's a really cool organization and you can keep up with them that way too.
I promise I'm not biased at all, but it's a great organization.
Fabuloso, proud of you.
Yes, a little biased. That's your daughter. You know what I mean? And that's all right. And you know, Zoe, I sent you an email, so I'm expecting a response back.
Thank you.
There you will get a response back.
All right. Once again, thank you to Stacy and thank you to our young panelists, our future. I'm feeling even more confident that our future looks very rosy in the city, throughout the state and throughout the country, where young people like this that are so engaged and so involved. I look up to you guys. You guys are really just doing important work, and it's truly, truly, truly appreciated. So with that said, we're going to transition into our next panel discussion. I feel it important to make an announcement about this panel. The reason why is because of the importance of this panel. I just want to say that it's important that we highlight this discussion. We had a discussion about 4 years ago for our reentry conference that took place at Mercer County Community College. The panel was moderated by a gentleman by the name of Craig Belt, and the panel included individuals such as Ms. Lydia Thornton and a host of others. The reason why I bring this discussion is because during this panel, the topic of women incarceration was brought up. It focused on the differences women face versus what men face incarcerated. the fact that some women have to give birth to a child while incarcerated. And last but not least, it focused on the abuse some women receive while incarcerated. Once again, think about this. This was 4 years ago that we had this discussion. In light of recent events of what's going on at Edmond Correctional Facility, and the fact that it's been continuously in the media for 18 months, the task force felt with duty to revisit this topic. But we want to try and do it a different way, from a different angle. Rather than having a panel with incarcerated women who have experienced abuse while incarcerated, who while talking about this abuse will be just reliving the trauma all over again. The fact that we don't have a mental health professional or individual to help them process that trauma while discussing it, we felt it wouldn't do them justice. We felt that we wanted to have this discussion, do it in a respectful way, but do it a different way. We wanted to have a discussion between a moderator, one panelist, and to also receive some questions from individuals who were a part of this conference. The ironic thing is that both the moderator and the panelists have ties to corrections. It's a unique tie, but they both have ties. I will let the moderator talk herself, but I want to give you a little bit of background about the panelists. They have been a policymaker. They have been a legislator. They have, more importantly, been an advocate for change. And so it's important that we touch on this topic. It's important that we're honest about this topic. And I think that we'll be better for it by really listening, learning, engaging, and giving our thoughts and opinions and being respectful about it. Because the most important way to handle a problem is head on. It's not putting our heads in the sand, not saying it's politically correct, not running from it, but dealing with it. So with that said, I will introduce our moderator, Yolanda Robinson. Yolanda has a BS from Fairleigh Dickinson University in hospitality, certified happiness specialist from Berkeley University, certified introduction to family engagement and education from Harvard University, certified behavioral medicine, a key to better health from Communix and urban practitioner cohort from Princeton Theological Seminary. She believes time is precious, and by living fully awake and curious, each individual is capable of creating a deeply fulfilling life, grounded in passion and purpose. Yolanda believes strongly in applying a holistic approach to success and works hard to promote balance in all areas of her clients' lives, whether it's businesses, career, family, intimate relationships, finances, or personal satisfaction. Yolanda motivates clients to see the big picture, create a vision, overcome obstacles, and define a realistic plan to begin living a powerful life they love. Before I hand it over to Yolanda, I just want to say this, that our special panelist is somebody who I can't even say has done and continues to do a great job in our city, and also through our state, and also is a model of some of the things that need to be done across the country. I will let Yolanda introduce him formally and let him introduce himself and talk about some of the things he has done, and I'll hand over the floor in a minute. But I just want to say thank you to former Governor Jim McGreevey for agreeing to be a panelist for this discussion. So with that said, Yolanda, the floor is yours.
Well, hello, everyone. Hello, good afternoon. I'm so delighted to be here. I'm actually even more excited to be here to talk to our former Governor McGreevey, because I think he's such an amazing young man. I remember a couple of years ago, I did a Christmas in July at Classic Bookstore, and Mr. McGreevey came and we ate strawberries together, you know what I mean? So he's an amazing guy. So when Perry asked me to be a part of this, I said, absolutely. Just tell me, what can I do? Because I feel as though a conversation like this is needed. And like Perry said, we don't need to talk to the women. We don't need to have them draw that back up again, those feelings to resurface, especially if we're not there to coddle them and hold them. So I think that we are able to have this conversation, a true, honest conversation about women. And I told Perry, I said, well, the title is You Are Seen and Heard, but what I hear from that is not seen and not heard, the invisible woman, so that's what we're going to be talking about, the invisible woman becoming visible. So Mr. McGreevy, thank you for taking the opportunity to be a part of this, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. So how should I start? What should I talk about? How should I go? I go, hello, darling, how are you?
And I said, anybody who calls me young, God bless you.
How are you? Do you remember our time at the Classic Bookstore?
I
Christmas in
certainly
July?
do. Thank you. That's a great memory.
Yes, wonderful. I'm looking forward to having this conversation because I did a lot of research, trying to find out, about women being incarcerated. Like Perry said, I retired at the age of 45 from the Department of Correction, working with Special Investigation Division, and couldn't find too much about women, but find a lot about men.
Yep.
But couldn't find a lot about women. You know what I mean? And I feel as though the woman is invisible, even though she's visibly seen in the facility, she's still invisible. So how can we make this woman visible?
So what we try to do is working with Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver and Senator Teresa Ruiz and Assemblywoman Pinta Murin and also Shavonda Sumter, Senator Cunningham, Senator Nellie Poe. We put together something called the Women's Project. And the whole goal was to recognize, to go to exactly what you said, Yolanda, is that women are the fastest growing cohort in the prison system. The prison system largely is designed by men, largely for men. And that when you look to women, I think as Perry said in the beginning of the conversation, it's trauma. And so that whether it's sexual abuse, domestic violence, addiction, it's trauma, trauma, trauma. Trauma and how it impacts your cognitive thinking, trauma in terms of growing up, trauma in terms of relationships. And so what the Women's Project does is try to work with, we've hired a nurse navigator to make sure that women have access to OBGYN services. There were women that were behind the wall that hadn't seen an obstetrician and gynecologist in years. It's helping them with depression, anxiety, mental health, to make sure that they're in a stable place. So I think that the first thing is to recognize that women overwhelmingly, more so than men, women suffer trauma that are in state prison, that are at Edna Mahan. And for the women that were at Edna Mahan, many of them were re-traumatized by the experience in the jail, whether it's sexual assault, physical violence. So what we try to do is to make sure that every single woman coming to reentry has access to a psychiatrist, has access to mental health. And in fact, Yolanda, this coming Monday, first time in the history of the nation, we are the Journal of Women and Criminal Justice. And I'm really excited. We're doing that at the State House Annex at 11 o'clock on Monday in the alcove of the State House Annex. And these are stories written by women when they were in prison and women when they've come out, and their advocates, talking about their experience, talking about their pain, talking about a wide range of issues, medical issues, hepatitis, diabetes, HIV, talking about behavioral issues, addiction, mental health, and then coming home, not having SNAP food stamps, not having GA, not having housing, and then trying to grapple with, rebuild your relationships with your children, with your family. So I think, to go to your point and Perry's point in the beginning of this conversation, talking about the children, talking about the young adults, is that trauma permeates the experience in correctional settings, but particularly for women, even more so than men. And I worked for 3.5 years with the women behind the wall. And it's so often, it's really difficult because one of the few things that keeps them going is their relationship with their children. But obviously, for them, time has stood still. But for the young people, for the families, like life is moving on. People develop relationships, whether it's another family member, an aunt or a grandmother. And so life moves on outside. But for people behind the wall, so often it doesn't, because you're freeze framed at the moment you walked in. And so it's all of a sudden like dealing with that challenge of family reunification, and how did you leave, and what happened, and how do you rebuild a healthy, loving relationship? So I think, Yolanda, to go to your point, it's to recognize, and to Perry's, it's to recognize trauma. It's to give women a safe space in which to share, which this Journal of Women in Criminal Justice is doing. And then it's making sure at a basic minimum that women have access to health care, whether it's medical care, whether it's behavioral addiction and mental health. That's so critically important. Because the reality is so often in prison, that doesn't happen. Women don't have, I've heard horror stories, whether it's surgery for women, going into surgery, attempting to address fibrosis, and then suffering a radical hysterectomy, women not having access to health care. So, I mean, what we need to do is to understand that these women need to be loved, they need to be cherished, but we need to provide them with the best possible treatment we would want for a sister, for a daughter, for a mother.
Yes, I mean, I'm so glad to hear that, because it's been a long time coming, even so far as when you talk about the prison system, some women haven't even touched the prison, but they're still in jail. They haven't even been incarcerated, but they're still incarcerated. I have an aunt whose mother was impregnated with her when she was a very young child. And years ago, if you got pregnant at a young age, they locked you up. So my aunt Judy was born in Edna Mayhem. She was born there as a baby. And then when she got older, she ended up working there because she felt like that was a part of her. And she felt like she needed to go back. So once she got older, she was able to work at Edna Mayhem and retire from there. So what does that say about a woman who can't let go? Because see, people don't understand. We may continue to move on with our journey, but in the back of our minds, it is burnt in there. That pain, that drama, that trauma, like you said, that trauma, but I'm so glad to hear that now people are seeing that women matter. We need the help. We need the medical attention, because even women who are not incarcerated, who live in, impoverished neighborhoods, they need medical attention as well.
Exactly.
So there's a big cry out right now that women need to continue to be there and support one another. I'm so delighted to hear that there are organizations now that are coming together to band together for women. And we need men like you to be bold enough to take charge and say, hey, think about that woman, because that could be your mother, your sister, your aunt, your neighbor, your cousin, so thank you for doing what you're doing.
No, Yolanda, and thank you for your inspiration and your advocacy and being way out front. I mean, you've lifted up your voice for years on these issues, and candidly, with the rest of us are just catching up. But it's also making sure women have access to health insurance, like making sure women are getting registered for Medicaid or President Obama, the Affordable Care Act. And then whether it's Medicaid, then getting into whether it's Blue Cross Blue Shield or WellCare or whatever particular insurance plan of their desire. And the same thing with the Affordable Care Act for people that are working and that need to provide insurance. So it's understanding the importance of preventative care and access to these OBGYN services, to these mental health services. And so it's difficult. And so when I listened to the earlier panel, and particularly for women coming out, many women came out, they didn't have a Medicaid card, they didn't have an ID card. And so it's really difficult. So how do you get SNAP? How do you get food stamps if you don't have an ID card? So that's what, New Jersey Reentry does is we help people get your ID card, address outstanding warrants, but with your ID card, you can get SNAP food stamps. You can get, and most importantly, you can get health care. I mean, we have a lot of women, Yolanda, that are, suffering from addiction, whether it's alcoholism or addiction or even heroin addiction. And so many of them are now in IOP, intensive outpatient, or Suboxone. And so they need that prescription, but they also need Medicaid. Without Medicaid, they don't have a way to pay for that prescription. So it's not just having the prescription, it's having the ability to pay for that for that particular product. So it's linking people to doctors, linking people to nurses, but also linking people to health insurance is so critically important.
It really is. It really is, because I believe that, like you said, when women go inside, it's a freeze frame.
Yeah.
Everything stops. So you either go in with the mindset of, okay, I'm going to be here forever, because the people that I know, they don't have the money to get me out.
Yeah.
I mean, guess what? $500 to someone might be like looking at 5,000.
Yeah.
It's a small number, but if you don't have it, you don't have it.
Yep. Exactly. And so when these women, I mean, I've seen them struggle, and that's why it's so important, Yolanda, when you lift your voice, because I just wanted to tell people, they can contact us, they can contact me, and we can connect them to healthcare. And then the other thing is just, Yolanda, it's hard sometimes figuring out how to get access. Say, for example, I have hepatitis. How do I make that I have access to get treatment for hepatitis C? How do I get access for diabetes and neuropathy? How do I get access, if I have HIV? So what we're trying to do is to connect people to real services in real time. And sometimes, this service may be at this hospital, that service at that hospital. And so instead of like just going around aimlessly, trying to help them with a navigator, help them to work through that.
Yeah. I think that we're definitely onto something. I don't care if we have to put out one of those our QR codes, like hit this code and it'll tell you your next space where you need to go. But I'm not going to hold you. But in closing, I just wanted to just say that women are women inmates are people too.
Amen.
We want to be treated like everyone else.
Much to come. It's Monday in front of the State House, at the State House Annex, and it's the Journal of Women and Criminal Justice. And it's edited by Dr. Gloria Bachman. Dr. Bachman is director of the Institute of Women at Robert Wood Johnson Medical School. So also in this first issue is focusing in on healthcare. Why women need, why women deserve, and why women must have, Yolanda, needed healthcare services, whether it's addiction treatment, mental health, or medical, how important that is. And so we're doing all sorts of great things. Women, candidly discovering that they have breast cancer, and what can they do, and how quickly can they have access to surgery, or how quickly people can have access to whatever pharmacy and treatment they need. So again, this is the Journal of Women and Criminal Justice, but then there's also something called the Women's Project. And if anybody's interested in joining the Women's Project, we'll invite you to our monthly meetings. I ask you to send your email to Yolanda.
Yes.
And Yolanda will give it to me. Yolanda, can you give out your email?
Yes, my email is yr535@msn.com, because Monday we do need to show up in numbers.
Amen.
You can also put it in the chat as well, Governor.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome.
Yes. I'm not good with the chat. I apologize for that.
That makes two of us.
Yeah, I'm a talker.
If my daughter was here, I could do the chat. Now the only chat, exactly.
Yeah.
The only chat I know is the chat I'm having with Yolanda.
Yes, that's all I know.
Amen. Thank you, Yolanda.
Thank you so very much, Governor. Thank you so very much.
Let me just say this, two things. We want to open the floor up for a few minutes to anyone that might have questions to Governor McGreevy. Once again, thank you for taking up the time to join us. But right now we have about 5 minutes. So if anyone has any questions they would like to ask, please do so right now while we have a few minutes.
Thank you, Perry. And Perry, thank you for all you do, and thank you for bringing this together today. Because
Yes.
this is and we've all heard the stats. I mean, America is 5% of the world's population. We lock up 25% of the people that are locked up in the world are locked up in America. Americans are not more evil. Americans are not more, they're not worse than any other group. What happens is we have an unnatural affinity towards incarceration. And so we're breaking that slowly and painfully. And sometimes it's difficult. I think the legislature and Governor Murphy with the public health emergency, releasing 3, look at that, Yolanda put in her email in the chat. I am impressed. Yolanda, now I'm alone. Now it's
I'm sorry.
Now it's just me doesn't know how to chat. But to go, Perry, but what you said is it's providing resources to people, right? So if you're going to ask somebody to come out of prison, but you don't have the resources for food, SNAP, you don't have the resources for temporary emergency assistance through GA, you don't have Medicaid to pay for your medical bills, or you don't have ID. And that's why there's so many people, Senators, Sandra Bolden Cunningham, and the Senate President Steve Sweeney just passed a major bill this past Friday that's going to improve reentry services for people coming into prison. We want more done behind the wall before people are released, right? You know how difficult it is to get an ID once you've been released, and then or get your MVC ID. You may not have an address. You may be couch surfing. You may be going from place to place. You may not have all your ID. I mean, our point is if somebody's in prison for 7 months, let alone 7 years or 17 years, that the NJDOC, the Department of Corrections, should be able to get you your ID. So you walk out with an ID. I mean, like if you walk out with an NDOC ID, what chance are you going to have? And by the way, I'd like to give a shout out to Senator Troy Singleton for what he's done in terms of housing and housing opportunities, because it's hard enough. But I mean, so the point is to try to do as much as we can behind the wall. So when you walk out, you have an ID, you have a Medicaid card, you have a SNAP card. And so that's why you need to bluntly get the Department of Corrections to step to the plate and get this stuff done. You just can't, especially during COVID, Perry. We were like, we were meeting people in parks. We were meeting people in a park. We were meeting people because, so you tell Perry, you tell Jim, you have to apply for food stamps on an iPhone. Well, I don't have an iPhone. I just came out of Northern State. I came out of Edna Mahan. I don't have a house. I don't have a permanent address. And so it's just understanding that if people have all this time behind the wall, darn it, why don't we make sense of that time?
Exactly.
Like we just opened a new training center in Kearney, New Jersey with Pastor Keith Davis and the Camden Dream Center.
Oh, I love him.
Oh, who doesn't love Keith? He's on. But Yolanda, we're teaching these young men and women. We've got 103 registered. They're looking at Cisco certification, routing. We've got solar installation we're doing for working with churches and low-income communities with installing solar, CDL, diesel mechanics. It's training people to a career. I mean, when we talk to PosiGen, which is a large solar installation, one of the things we said about, we've got young men and women that are hungry to work. And so if you give people skills, they'll work. They'll work. UPS just hired 62 former incarcerated persons. And so I think, Perry, what we've got to do is we've got to end this mandatory minimum, not just for nonviolent crimes, but for violent crimes.
Yeah.
We have to end this mandate. We have to allow a judge to make a judge. A young man, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me using, Calvin, my friend Calvin, went in when he was 14 years old. He just came out after 38 years. 38 years, Perry, 38 years. And so there was a mandatory minimum of 35 years. So, I mean, as Calvin said to me, Yolanda, what incentive is there for me to do something right when I know that I've got to serve 35 years, whether I'm on my head, I'm sitting on my hands, I'm reading scripture or I'm causing a ruckus. It doesn't make a difference. We have to treat people with respect like you would treat your son or your daughter, and you have to reward people for good behavior. If there's no incentive, there's no incentive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
We have to do away with these mandatory minimums, and we have to treat people with respect. We have to hold people accountable, but we have to reward good behavior. We have to reward people doing the next right thing.
Amen.
I agree.
Yeah,
Let me just say this. Before you wrap up, Yolanda, we have Wanda who wants to share a quick experience, and then we have John who has one question before we wrap up.
I just want to say I see many of my heroes across this Zoom call today, and I am overwhelmed with inspiration and faith and excitement for the future of impacting first entry lives. My journey began in the 70s with my brother, the Reverend King Webster, who was incarcerated as a young person, and my mother became an advocate for decriminalizing marijuana, for the whole system. Reverend Leroy Holmes, many of you may know, Reverend Joseph Ravenel. I started out with them in the 80s. In the late 80s, my work with the Urban Women's Center with Reverend Florence Ridley at Clinton State Prison. I don't know if it's still the name Clinton State Women's Prison or not, but we went in there and
End the Mahan.
Okay, well, I'm glad they changed the name, because Clinton has a lot of history there. I spent like a couple of days talking to women in various levels of the prison system to try to shape a model called Women in Prisons in the Urban Women's Center. Now, what happened was, what I heard from them is the same thing I'm hearing right this moment, which is inspiring, but yet concerning, which is the basic resources that you talked about, Senator, Governor McGreevey and Yolanda and everyone else. Is women need to have direct access, what we call the pocketbook. What's in your pocketbook? What's in your purse? The basic survival tools coming out of the door. And then who do they meet with when they get out of the door? That was the question in 1987 when I met with Florence Ridley, and we set up the first Women in Prisons program at Urban Women's Centers in Newark, Camden, Trenton, and New Brunswick. I want to say this. One of the basic needs was, I need to be able to have a telephone. I need to be able to have a place where I can sit and get information. What I would like to see happen is your model that you're doing. How can we decentralize it in places like a church, where they know this is my women's resource center for incarcerated women, and I can come here, and how can we create jobs for these women when they get out? They can be a first responder to their own peers. Those are my thoughts. I worked with Chuck Hytarian when he brought Jim Brown to New Jersey, America I Can. And we need to think about, how do we decentralize resources on a grassroots level where a woman knows that she can connect to what you're doing, but in her neighborhood? And how do we create jobs for the women themselves to empower one another? So I think the work is great, and it's compelling, and we have to keep focusing in on, how do we change the laws that put women behind prison for self-defense, domestic violence. And but the thing that I want to share is that we saw in that decade in Urban Women's Centers, we saw women's lives turn around just because they knew where they could make a phone call, where they could get housing, where they could get a job, where they could get support to reconnect to their children. And I'd like to see us go back to something even greater. The faith community is so needed, but a resource, sir, a grant that begins to decentralize what you're doing on a local level, perhaps connected to churches, where you have a resource for women in every city in New Jersey, where women are in high numbers coming home. We need to decentralize now. They need to have a place where there's a counselor there who looks like them, who went through what they went through. That's my only input.
So one, I love everything you said, except you were hanging out with my Republican friend Chuck Hitayan. That's the only part of it. I'm only
But
kidding.
he brought Jim Brown to New Jersey.
Exactly. There's hope for redemption for us all. No, I'm only kidding. But I just want you to know, though, we have centers. New Jersey Reentry Corporation, by the way, just so you know, our strategic partner is the National Action Network, Reverend Al, and the New Jersey Coalition of Latino Pastors. And so we work closely with, like yesterday, I was with Reverend Dr. Stanley Hurst and Perth Amboy of Mount Pisgah AME Church. So we work with the churches, the AME Zion, the Evangelicals, the Baptists. So we work. So what I mean, bluntly, we work better with the churches because the churches will work closely with us. I mean, sometimes frustrating with the Department of Corrections, just bluntly, because we want a hard handoff so that if Jim McGreevy is coming out of prison, I want him to be told in something called the JCAP process, which is the process when you're admitted to prison and when you exit, that you need to report to 936 Bergen Street in Newark, New Jersey, or you need to go to 591 Summit Avenue in Jersey City, or you need to go to, Hamilton Avenue in Patterson or Neptune City. So what we have 9 sites in central northern New Jersey Reentry Corporation. It's in those counties. And in each of those counties, we have a social worker who does a basic biopsychosocial markup. They get the criminogenic history of the woman, the psychological profile of the woman, and they connect them to the federally qualified health center and something called the CCBHC, the Certified Clinical Behavioral Center, because a lot of the women coming home, they have mental health, depression issues, to make sure that they can see a psych and they can get their mental health needs. And then just to go to your point about jobs, we just opened 2 months ago in Kearney, New Jersey, the first of its kind reentry training center. And for the women explicitly, and it's not just for the women, but largely it's women taking these courses, it's medical coding so that, and I don't know all this stuff, but when Perry comes in and he walks into the doctor and he says he has a headache, that's code 071. When I walk in and say I have a sprained ankle, that's code 293. So we're training training women to know the codes so that they can get jobs in doctors' offices. And so we're looking at medical coding. We're also working with the woman on HVAC, on Cisco certification, and also we're working with the hospitality industry and the retail industry. So the whole goal is not that some woman candidly is working for what I call modern slavery in a warehouse 30, 60, 90 days. And when she's about to get a health benefits, she gets fired. The whole goal is you get a credential that you get hired and you have a career for.
I think that's awesome. One of the things that I'd like to see is listening to you is, can we think about creating for women a component for reentry where there are women hired who are coming out and they are trained to work peer to peer in the context of what you're talking about. I think it's magnificent.
We're starting a peer-to-peer course in August, but I mean, just openly, it's not focused just on women. It's focused on men and women coming out of prison.
Well, we want you to do one for women. We want to see some women empowering women. And I think you're doing a magnificent job. As I said, my family history working with reentry, Reverend Joseph Ravenel, I think is a great partner for what everyone is doing. As I shared my own story with my brother, the late Theophilus King Webster, his program, Back to Life people. So for women, I just would like to see us do a women's driven initiative.
I'll tell you what we're doing, Wanda. It can be part of it. We are doing for women. We're doing a women's leadership with an organization out of Trenton called Wings, and we're getting women and we're connecting them to women businesses, women entrepreneurs, and we're connecting to women coming out of prison and helping. And then we worked with another. I'm sorry. I'll keep quiet. I'm sorry,
I
Pat.
think that's
An organization called Same Sky. And this is
okay.
an organization that women in Rwanda made jewelry and it's being sold in America and Canada. And Same Sky also had the women coming out of prison making jewelry so that they could make jewelry whenever they, whatever hours, but it gave them flexibility to go to school, to get a certificate, to get a cosmetology license. And by selling the jewelry, they made money. So we are doing some things that are just
You're doing amazing things. You're doing amazing things.
No, Lord, like I'm just a
God,
broken vessel, one.
together.
But I'm not hanging out with Chuck Hytaian, but I know that. No,
Well, we're all coming from different perspectives, but at the core of what we know is that, God makes a difference, faith makes a difference, being transparent about what's on our heart and knowing that we can never do enough, but we have to keep doing something. So I'm encouraged by the great work that's being done. And I just wanted to share my perspective on what I learned with women. And
your perspective is practical, which is what I want. It's about making a difference in these lives, giving these women a job that they can hold their head up high and they can support their family and they can start beginning life again. And that's why I support, the training that you talked about is so important, because if you don't have training, you're going to just be on a cash register. And that's a hard way to make a living. You're going to be doing 2-3 jobs.
And give that formerly incarcerated person, whether it's a man or a woman, give them a seat at the table, give them a line item in the budget, and give them a job as a coordinator, as a caseworker. Help them help each other. Hire the ex-offender. Put them on the payroll. That's what I'm advocating for. And also, I would like to see somebody investigate the graveyard at Clinton State Prison, where for decades, that's a sensitive one. But I'm just throwing it out there.
1,000%. That's never been done, and that needs to be done.
Yep.
Let me just say thank you so very much, Wanda. I see we got one more question because we're a little behind time.
I'm sorry.
Gotta get back on track.
You had to blame Wanda. It wasn't all my fault.
It's okay. And I know John had his hand up. So John, please ask your question. Then we're gonna have Yolanda wrap up. And I have one special thing for you, Governor McGreevy, as well, after John and Yolanda wraps up. Go ahead, John.
I appreciate that, Perry. Thank you. Actually, my question is going to be sort of associated with some of my remarks later on. So, and I appreciate Wanda interrupting my former boss, Governor McGreevy, because once he gets going on this topic, and I loved it, but it was great. But I think for me, with what the governor and Wanda was saying, it's part of the answer, it's part of my remarks. And it's going to also be part of the question that I have for the governor is community-based organizations and nonprofits, social service providers overall, in my opinion, have not necessarily prioritized the first entry process as much. And that was clear and embedded. And even in what the governor was saying is, it was a lot of his agency. And what Wanda was saying, which was help us learn from you and take on those things. And as a leader of a nonprofit organization, I concur and believe that. And so my question is for both Yolanda and for Governor McGreevy is, how have nonprofits who have not prioritized first entry, see that, Perry? First entry, responded to your work?
Well, that's a great question. I think, John, it's a really good question. And I'm processing as I think, different people have done different things. I mean, let me just back up for a second. And I'll say that one of the frustrating things is in the year 2000, John, and you know these stats, but just for the audience, there were 31,000 people in state prison. Today, there's 12,000. That being said, the state budget in 2000 for DOC was 1 billion. It's still 1 billion and has a third of the folks. Now, I know the value of the dollar has gone down, but there's something called the justice dividend. And clearly, and I know this might be controversial, but I think we got to think about closing a state prison. And so, you know, I think the challenge is, John, if we're going to keep the same, if we're going to say the right things, and I just want to applaud the legislature. I want to applaud the governor on expungement, on exoneration, on working to do away with mandatory minimums, like huge stuff. And by the way, New Jersey was recognized by a national group that I work with, Collateral Consequences, of having the most progressive legislation in the nation. So I want to give credit where credit is due. That being said, there's always tomorrow. And I would like, you know, at some point in time, we got to wrap our heads around the idea is that if we've got few people in prison, we've got to close prisons and we've got to reinvest in community organizations. So that's one. The second thing is, I think we're having great success, John, working with community-based healthcare organizations, and that's happening. The federally qualified health centers, the CCBHE's, community behavioral health centers, that's going really well. We have really great relationships with churches. I mean, I can go on and on about the AME Missionary Society, the fellowship. I mean, really close relationships. Because one of the things that's happening is churches are referring folks to us, whereas Department of Corrections always doesn't. So I'm really grateful to the strength, to the network, and just candidly, the organizational ability of the Baptist Convention, of the AME churches, of District 1, you know, of their leadership out of Bishop and the leadership out of Philadelphia. So, I mean, the church communities have been great. I'm just going to be open. I mean, part of the frustration is with DOC. So I can't, if at the end of the day, John Hart has a treatment program, a medical treatment program that specializes, say, for example, in addiction for ex-offenders, but Jim comes out of Trenton State or Northern or Rolway, and I don't have Medicaid, John has no way to pay for that service. So, I mean, when you say, and I appreciate your question about first generation, the problem is, you know, we have, if the Department of Corrections has a 1 billion with a B budget, we need to be conscious of the fact that if there's going to be a justice dividend and community organizations, and again, I'll just say that, John, on Medicaid, that's whether it's state money or federal money or Department of Labor, which has been a great partner through WIOA. So we see it happening, but obviously the more people are certified with SNAP, general assistance, Medicaid, Social Security behind the wall, the better those money and those assets will travel with them. And then, so what happens is, I see this all the time. You see a training vendor. So you have John Hart, a general construction training, but, you know, to get that person trained, they have to have an ID. They got to get registered by the local One Stop, so they get that WIOA certification. So having that ID is critical. So again, I think more happens if NJDOC gets me more ready before I walk out that door. Once I'm outside of that wall, I'm struggling to eat, I'm struggling to sleep, I'm struggling to get by the day. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense because, you know, you're going to go through that. You know, the people are going to go through needing to make sure everything is right for them when they leave. You know, but I think that you're doing an amazing job. You know, the people that you're working with. You know, we talked about that today. You know, what it is that needs to be done and how it's going to get done. You know, and we all have to continue to put our best foot forward and work at it together. You know, even far as training for the people that work there. I hear that we're going to get training for the people that are leaving, but the people that are working there, they're distraught too. Amen. But that's a whole nother show. We're not even going to go into that. Perry will put something together about that as well, but that's a whole nother topic. But there's a lot that needs to be done. But yep. I'm glad that we definitely have, you know, people like yourself at the helm, making sure that laws are being changed. that is getting to the State House. The conversation is getting attention. And that's what we need to do. Continue to have the conversation and continue allowing it to get attention that it needs.
But, and I just want to make clear though, Yolanda, it's not me, it's the community. And you've got a great, with Senator Turner, and you got great assembly representation, young dynamic representation in Mercer County. It's the churches. I can just go through a list of advocates, frankly, because I'm in the service business. So day in and day out, I worry about making sure that somebody has their medicine, their addiction treatment, their housing, their legal, their employment training, their jobs. But there's also a great advocacy community that I would want to lift up and praise, because day in and day out, they've really moved the ball. And so
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I just want to thank you, because I know Perry looking at me like, we got to move on, So
I know Perry's just, Yolanda, Perry's just trying to shut us down, but we're not going to let it. We're just going to keep it. No, I'm going to prove John right. I'm going to keep on talking. But anyway, apologize.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I just want to wrap up my end so we can, move forward. I'm just trying to keep everything in decency and order, stay on task. But I just want to in close say, thank you to everyone, for taking the time to listen to me, listen to Governor McGreevey. It was a great conversation. I thank you for that. And I'm looking forward to having more conversation about, women incarcerated, because they're not invisible. They are.
Amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Wanda, and come Monday at 11 o'clock, State House Annex, the alcove, and we're distributing the first copy of the Journal of Women and Criminal Justice. We have women in prisons all over America. And with that, I'll keep quiet. Blessings and thank you, Yolanda.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Perry. God bless.
Let me just say this. I want to say one quick thing before we transition to our next panel discussion. I just want to share a quick 30-second story. Probably about almost 20 years ago to today, I had a chance to hear a person give a speech that inspired me to focus on at that time what was called reentry, but for me, first entry. Even though I was in a place where I was getting into a field that was the total opposite of trying to assist individuals to get their lives together. I was in a field going into law enforcement. And in this speech, this person said to everyone who was there, even though you're getting into this field, you still have to remember that the people who you're working with, they're human beings. And you can't just look down upon them. You have to be honorable and respectable with those individuals. And that person who gave that speech was Governor McGreevey. And that was very important that you put that in our heads at that period of time, because for a long period of time, we were in the academy and we were being told and over again that you have to do this, you have to do that. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that was not pounded in our heads over and over again was the fact that these individuals are human beings. It was you, and also at that time, the commissioner of DOC, who basically said, you know what, these are people.
Devon Brown, good man.
Devon Brown. And with that said, I have something special I want to share with you. Brittany, do you have that, Brittany?
Oh Lord. Oh Lord. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my Perry. Perry, you're the only one who still looks good. My gosh.
But
You made my day.
Just know that you two were the main ones that put that seed in my head about treating people behind bars with respect, and also pushed me to want to get in the field of first entry and making sure that we continue to do the service and do right by them and see them as human beings. So thank you for that.
Oh,
thank
Perry,
you for coming out speaking.
Perry, God bless you. When I see that picture, I know I am male, pale, and stale. I'm gone completely gray. God bless you. Perry, you got to send me a copy of that photograph.
I got you. I'll send it to you. All right.
Thank you.
Excuse me one quick second. Did I miss, is this book that, this journal that you're referring to, is this a project that Bonnie Kernish was part of?
I don't know if Bonnie contributed, but she would have been welcome to. No, I think this was part of the Women's Project that was born out of the Women's Reentry Commission, but it's open to everybody. We welcome every woman's voice, and particularly the voices of women that are incarcerated or have been released. But everybody's welcome. No, and I appreciate Bonnie's good work as well. So thank you.
Thank you once again to Yolanda.
God bless.
God bless. God bless.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Amen, amen.
Thank you, Yolanda. God bless. Balloons. God bless. Take care, Par.
God bless.
Well, thank
so
you.
we're going to move into the later part of our conference. We're going to have our keynote speaker speak, even though he got a chance to ask some questions. Personally, this guy to me is amazing. He's awesome. He's a thinker. He's a person who will ask a question before he even lets you respond to answer the question. He has the answer already thought out, which is amazing to me. But at the same time, you can literally see his brain moving and thinking and things coming together. And he's always willing to have those deep conversations, even if it doesn't put him in the most positive light. And he likes to ask those questions that are tough and hard. And sometimes when he asks those questions, you can't answer them right then and there. You have to go back and think and research and come back. And it helps you to become a better person. So with that said, I want to introduce Mr. John Hart. He is the Chief Operating Officer at ILES. A little bit about John. John took on the role of Chief Operating Officer at ILES in 2014. He has served in a variety of positions in New Jersey, state government associated services, including Chief of Staff for the New Jersey Department of Education, Deputy Chief of Staff for the Department of Human Services, and Chief Operations for the Sandy Recovery Program. Mr. Hart has also worked in nonprofit academic settings, including Director of Operations for Resources for Children with Special Needs, a nonprofit agency in New York City, an executive for Virtua Health System, and as Associate Director of the Senator Walter Rand Policy Institute at Rutgers University. Mr. Hart has been an active member in the community and is or has been a member of several community boards, including Teen Sharp, a youth mentoring program, New Jersey State Advisory Committee for the U.S. Commission of Civil Rights, the Boys and Girls Club of Camden County, the Walt Whitman Art Center, New Jersey Infant Mortality Committee, Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies, New Jersey Self Neighborhoods, and Gang Prevention Task Force. Overall, John is a wealth of knowledge, a great person, and once again, thank you for taking the time out to be our keynote speaker. With that said, the floor is yours, John.
Harry, thank you very much, man. Stacy got it right. I mean, man, you do that good. You do that well. I record that. I appreciate that. Oftentimes, I've had so many jobs over the years that whenever I sort of hear the bio, I start thinking like somebody else named John Hart must have been applying for all these jobs and actually really pissed right now because I keep getting them. I've had some really interesting opportunities. And one of them was to work with Governor McGreevey as a Deputy Chief of Staff for the Department of Human Services. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I wanted to know if Brittany, if you have the slides and if the slides are up. I'm not able to see them, so I'm just gonna, oh, I can see them. Okay, so if I stay over there, I'm looking at the slides. Again, Perry and everyone that's on this conference, is really, really important conference. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk a little bit about my history, my work, the work at ILES, and to learn, more importantly. I've had an opportunity to listen and learn, and that's really what it's all about, right? So if we go to the first slide, great. I love data. You'll hear me always say, you know, God, I trust, all others bring data. I started off as a social researcher, and that's just something that has sort of defined my work and what I've been about. And so I like to start off with data. It's just the way I do it. And I like to just throw numbers out there. So I don't want you to see the whole PowerPoint with all the sentences about it. So 650,000. What do we think 650,000 is? Well, more than 650,000 ex-offenders are released from prison every single year nationally. 2/3. of which approximately 2/3 will likely be arrested within 3 years of release. 500%. America incarcerates its citizens at a 500% higher rate than the rest of the world. You heard former Governor McGreevey talk about that. And 2/3 of those people that are incarcerated are Black and brown men. Taxpayers pay over $100,000 for each 3-year prison term. And 1 in 5 in prison are due to parole violations, technicalities. These are things that you know, things that we've talked about, things that have been discussed in conferences like this on an ongoing basis. But as we go through my remarks, I want you to think back. I'm going to be thinking back to these data and how they highlight how important it is that we move towards strategic, concerted efforts. Opportunities like this discussion, opportunities for us to talk about this, as well as the amazing efforts from folks like Governor McGreevey and what Wanda was talking about and what Yolanda was talking about. It really is important for us to think about these data and how we can make these data obsolete and what we are doing to make these data obsolete. And so my first part of my remarks is really about what I've done over the 30-year or so social service career that I've had. Jacques said he is a prune. Please, brother, you look amazing, first of all. But man, after I go over my career, I think that y'all are gonna say this guy is whatever comes after prune, right? So I just wanted to say, man, Jacques, you look great, right? I've had a number of positions in my career that put me in the path of doing something about the lack of cohesive first entry. See that, Perry? First entry. I had to change all of the PowerPoint here in my remarks to put in first entry just in case. Let's see if I get it right. The cohesive first entry system in New Jersey and the surrounding states. First, I ran $1 million outreach and research project in the early 90s in North Philadelphia and in West Philadelphia, where nearly 80% of our clients were formerly jailed. On this project, I taught former addicts and sex workers, that's what we call them, how to help people use bleach kits so they would not get AIDS, HIV. This was at the height of the AIDS, HIV pandemic in urban areas. And it would be safe to say that nearly all of my staff and all of the people they helped were formerly incarcerated, right? And you know what? I didn't do a damn thing about first entry in that position. Next, in the late 90s, I led community research and outreach for South Jersey's largest health system, where I coordinated large collaboratives around social service agencies, specifically in Camden, a city where, along with Essex County at the time, comprised 1/3 of incarcerated people in New Jersey. Again, guess what? Didn't do a damn thing about first entry. Then in the early 2000s, as I mentioned, I was Deputy Chief of Staff at the Department of Human Services. Back then, that team, the leadership team, was in charge of an $11 billion budget with 25,000 employees, all dedicated to providing social services to New Jersey's most vulnerable populations. At DHS, I had the ability to help highlight core issues that have been discussed throughout today's conference, right? I mean, come on, my overall boss was the former Governor McGreevey who just spoke. And again, at DHS, I didn't do a damn thing about first entry. And then in the mid-2000s, I ran a policy institute out of Rutgers Camden, an institute designed in large part to highlight our urban communities' most urgent issues. Again, especially in Camden, where at that time, nearly 1/3 of incarcerated folks came from, and along with Essex County. And here again, didn't do a damn thing about first entry. So by 2007, I was working in state government again, this time as Chief of Staff. So I want to, Brittany, if you can take it to the next, I apologize, the next one, there we go. So you see my little thing here is my drives folks who know me fairly well and try to keep up with what job I'm in or what city I'm working in, pretty crazy. So it gives you a sense as to over the years where I've jumped and where I've worked. But in 2007, I was Chief of Staff for the Department of Education, as Perry mentioned. An agency whose sole responsibility is to our youth education. I mean, we know that New Jersey's education has struggled, right? Especially the urban education, I should say. here in Trenton, just six years ago, when after I took on the chief operating officer job here at Isles, over half of our students dropped out. And while in recent years that dropout statistic has improved, a closer look shows that student academic success has not improved. So essentially, we are keeping our students on the rolls better, but they're still woefully underprepared academically by the time they're out of school. In fact, many of our urban students are designated as special needs, right? And as you know, special needs students are one of the most significant correlates to imprisonment. And at NJ DOE, I didn't do a damn thing about first entry. So right about now, you're probably asking yourself, if throughout this guy's career, he doesn't think he did much about the very topic I'm supposed to talk about, why the heck should I listen to him? I mean, he should be listening to me. And I did. But because through those years, I have tangentially been working in and around it, I think I might have something to say. So initially I thought, Perry, why are you asking me to talk about this? You know Governor McGreevey, you know all these other people. But Perry did have a reason. You see, my career story in social services, in my opinion, over the last 30 years is a lot like many others who've had the same positions of influence. They, like me, could have made more of a difference around first entry. We, or they, could have championed the cause, but we didn't. Truth is, I've been working on first entry related issues since the 80s, but the fact is, I personally have done little direct intervention work around first entry. So I was asked to speak to you today because people like me have in part been part of the problem for such a long time. So Perry, thanks for making me come out and bare my soul to some of my friends here, some people who've known me, and to everyone else here, and having to admit that I and others like me have been part of the problem. All right, so now that we've established it's my fault and others like me fault, let's chat a little bit about first entry as a social service issue. As I said, I love data. In God we trust, all others then bring data. So Britt, if you can switch to the next thing and bring up the poll, that's perfect. I wanted to have folks, keep you interactive, make sure you're paying attention. So we have for those of you, hopefully you all can see it, there's a poll question, and the question is, do you believe prisoner entry has historically been prioritized as a social service issue? That's a quick yes or no question. I'm gonna put my own answer in. I can't see your answers, so it's okay. I don't think you could see mine either. Okay. So why haven't more people in my position been involved, right? Britt, if I can, do you have the numbers here? Okay, so if everyone can get a chance, you can get a look at, I don't know if you've ever done this before. I kind of like it. I'm sorry, I'm a little geeky about it, but I like seeing your answers in real time, right? So 80% believe that reentry has historically not been prioritized as a social service issue. Whew, I'm so glad that you said that. 20%, I'd love to talk to you, maybe get a sense of it. But the rest of my remarks were pretty much based upon hopefully the 80% of you would agree with me, because I was part of that 80%. So if indeed we are right, and 80% of them haven't, why haven't more people in positions been more involved? Well, to me, prisoner reentry has suffered from an identity issue. You know what I'm talking about? It has not, over at least my career, been on the forefront of social service delivery in America, and especially in our urban, primarily Black and brown communities. Now, if I'm right, and if you agree, the question is, why is that? So let's see what you think with another poll, which is a little more complicated this time. If you had to pick one, which of the following is a major factor for prisoner reentry not being prioritized as a social service issue? And your choices are there. We were going to have the Jeopardy music go on here while you're put your answers in, but instead I'll just say that obviously Brittany did not have the time helping run this thing to put in first entry instead of prisoner reentry in the polls, but you all know what we're talking about. All right. So this one's a little more complicated. I don't think we gave you maybe we did, a chance to answer multiple questions. Just wanted to get a sense as to where your thoughts were, where your ideas and perspectives were. What do y'all think about that? 71% think of it as race and ethnicity. It's split with the fact that the jail is supposed to be rehab and that criminal imprisonment is a business. All things that we've talked about, all things you've heard Governor McGreevey and others talk about, right? So let's go to the next slide. So what are the factors that contribute to not being prioritized? Well, I'll give you my take on it. First, I believe it's because exactly what we just talked about, is that it impacts mostly Black and brown adults, right? Fourth, the myth of rehab. Wait, now you might be wondering what happened to 2 and 3, right? Well, number 2, it's my mistake. Number 2 is because it impacts mostly Black and brown males and females. And number 3 is because it impacts mostly Black and brown adult male and females. So I believe that 71% is so important that it needs to take up at least 3 spaces on this list, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that later, even though I'm sure we have, and you have in the past, talked about that impact so much more, both today as well as in previous conversations about things like this. So let's talk about the myth of rehab. Embedded in the myth of rehab is our nation's culture of seemingly internally criminalizing minority criminal cultures while celebrating white criminal cultures, right? I mean, this is probably not up to too much debate, right? Whether it's The Sopranos or whether it's any other movie about former white cultures that have been in the ghetto, in urban areas, and how they have been essentially celebrated in many respects, whereas the minority criminal culture has been demonized, and certainly from a criminal justice perspective has come down hard on. So the myth of rehab is associated with this because what we're really not doing, many people who are in the suburbs, and many folks who might be non-minority, believe that, well, you go to prison, you serve your time, we don't really want you back in the community, but either way, you were rehabbed and that's it. We don't need to continue to provide services for you. That's not part of the deal. The idea is that rehab has done what it's supposed to do. Fifth is, again, 1, 2, 3, 1, 4, 5. Fifth is, it's a business, man. I love me some Jay-Z, and one of my favorite lines is he says, I'm a business man, not businessman. And this jail is a business. There's whole infrastructures that are in place to keep the status quo or increase the number of jail, right? So whether it's lobbyists, politicians, unions, and of course businesses, they rely on a steady stream of inmates. And sixth is the system is not set up to care. This is really mostly what I want to talk about. Being in the business of caring myself, right? And it may not be something that's not as obvious. It's the reason why I wanted to make sure I asked that question to Governor McGreevey while he was on. In my opinion, there really is no institution, no social service institution that is in place to care. If you notice, when Governor McGreevey was talking, he was talking about the Department of Corrections. He was not talking about, and he talked about the Department of Labor, whose job it is to get people a job, right? We didn't talk that much about Department of Human Services, the Department of Education, the higher learning, the Department of Community Affairs, and the Department of Health, all agencies that I have worked for. And as I said in my initial remarks, all agencies and jobs in which were in a position to do something. It was a fairly high position and didn't do much. So I equate it as being in the Department of Education to it's being similar, the way that we treat first entry folks, to being similar to in New Jersey and quite frankly, the nation, our treatment of dropouts, right? So youth that have dropped out. State departments of education, specifically New Jersey Department of Education, I can definitely speak to that, right? Because I ran it, does not see itself as a core role for services to dropouts. You know what I mean about it, right? Think about it. When a student drops out of school, systems don't do a lot to bring them back. I mean, they are accepted back if they come back within the school system, but they have to adapt to the school. In the same way, jails presumably provide some rehab and some type of assistance while they're in jail. But once they're out, they're pretty much on their own. Department of Corrections is not exactly providing a lot of services to help the first entry folks move forward and be successful and not come back to jail. So for me, dropouts and first entry have a lot in common. And as we'll see later on, you know, they kind of have a lot, not more than a lot in common. There is a correlating factor to them, right? So if we can go to the next slide. All right, I'm going to talk about a little bit about IOs and what we do, but first I want to tell you a little bit, because I told you about my work, I didn't tell you about me personally. So I am a brother of two people that have re-entered, but they've never really recovered from a broken system. And I've seen what it has meant to them. Both of them have gone back into jail on multiple occasions, and both of them suffer from a variety of issues, including substance abuse. As a Black man born, raised, and lived in communities who have suffered the most from that system, and as a service leader of a community-based nonprofit in Trenton dedicated to self-reliance, I can tell you that we need to do more directly. We need to do more in our service delivery around prisoner reentry or first entry. That is the first time I messed up right there, Perry. So now that you've got my bona fides a bit, or lack thereof at the beginning, right? And I've given you my perception and perspective, or an excuse as to why folks like me haven't been more sort of direct in first entry social service delivery. I'd like to talk a little bit about how my organization and Stacy's organization, IOS, have been working to bridge that gap. So IOS has delivered social services related to, but not directly, that's key, not directly connected with prisoner reentry. And as I've often said many times, the only way to win is not to play. And that is one of my favorite lines. So with that in mind, much of IOS work with amazing staff like Stacy and with amazing former board members like Pastor Karen and Jacques Howard, you know, for the better part of 2 decades, they and longer than that, have been a part of running an alternative school dedicated to dropouts. They have helped us funnel hundreds of thousands of dollars into Trenton's community-based service system. And I am going on record, and this is recorded, to saying that I will make it my work mission to ensure that we help out the United Front in a significant way as well. I'm pledging to provide resources to them in my position. And so we've provided financial services and housing counseling services to low-income people. We developed innovative job programs. We've done a lot in the 4 decades of service to Trenton and the Mercer County area.
Amen.
But what we haven't done is focus on first entry. What we haven't done until recently is dedicated ourselves to being an active anti-racist organization. What we haven't done is highlight and advocate for policy changes that would significantly move the needle on improving New Jersey's first entry system. So if we can go forward a little bit, Brittany, to just give you a little bit of what we do in pictures. Go to the next slide. See if Stacy shows up in any of these. I tried to get him in. He did not. My bad, Stace. Go to the next slide. So we transform. We believe that people matter and place matters. You know, our mission and vision is to provide self-reliance and healthy, safe communities, right? And we do that primarily here in Trenton and here in Mercer County. Like Governor McGreevey, he talked a lot about what he does, and it's pretty amazing. But when you look at those numbers that we talked about for the state, we all know that much of what we do are, as I described, cups and buckets, right? So if first entry issue is a bucket and IOS is able to, or let's use dropouts as an issue since that's something we do directly. But if dropout is, the issue of dropout is a bucket. we're able to serve and see 100, thanks to Stacy and others, 100, 125 youth a year. We know that every 4 years, based upon the data, that about 3,000, there are 3,000 dropouts of folks who have not completed high school, walking around from the age of 16 to 22, 23 years old in Trenton. But we're serving 100, 125 of them. It's 3,000. What's the point, right? The issue is bigger than our four walls can handle. But not if we can be a cup in a bucket and help others become a cup in a bucket. And those who are better cups and buckets than us, we can learn from them to improve our cup, right? And if enough of us start to put those cups in that bucket, right? Eventually, what we'll find is we're making a difference in that bucket. We're filling that bucket and fixing that bucket. Wow, I am taking that analogy fairly far, but you get my point, right? You get what I'm saying. You don't have to solve the issue yourself, right? You can highlight, provide insights, provide feedback, get highlights, get insight so that you can do your job better, so you can be a part of it. And that's what we are trying to do at ISLES. And that's what a lot of other nonprofit agencies, both here in Trenton and Mercer County and throughout the state, are trying to do. And if we're not, we should be. And if you find that we're not, call us on it. Push us to do that, right? All right, next slide, Britt, thanks. So, you know, I don't want to make my remarks too long here, but I do want to sort of focus on something here from a holistic approach to first entry or prisoner reentry, and understand that this is, for many of you, or some of you at least, nothing new. But for those of you, for my brethren and sisterin who are running nonprofits or running or going to be or are social service leaders at the state, county, or even local areas, I think it's important for us to think about success in terms of first entry in a holistic manner. And that's something I'm proud that ISLES has been a part of and is a part of. We are a complicated organization, try describing what we do, and it's pretty hard. But you know what? The issues that are affecting and impacting our formerly incarcerated are complicated and hard. And the ability for us to coordinate, to meet their needs, their ever expanding, evolving, changing needs, right? It requires for us and other agencies to be nimble, right? It requires first and foremost our focus. The best way to focus is for y'all, right, out here who are seeing us not focus on that, an issue that's important to you, to push us to focus on that, right? But once we are focused on that, we need to understand that a holistic approach is necessary. Right. And that's not something that we at ISLES have done in the past, but it's something that, thanks to leaders like Perry and the rest of you here, we are pledging ourselves to move toward. So actually, I use the same holistic approach for dropouts. I keep bringing this up, how amazing it is that the two are so related. Essentially, it's taking a structured caring environment, giving opportunities for vocational or educational training, developing life skills, understanding that as Perry and others have said, that this is, as they come back into really the first time into a society, that it requires a changed society, a changed community. Oftentimes they have responsibilities, they have family that they now have to care for, where all they did before was caring for itself. Right. And so that requires an approach that it needs to include life skills development. It needs to include soft skills development. It needs to include case management and social services. It needs to include job development, and it needs to be person-centered. And here's the other thing. It needs to utilize technology. We are functioning as if we're still, because I was there in the 80s and in the 90s, where we have technology, we have apps that would be able to, if Department of Corrections, if parole, if human service deliveries, if nonprofit agencies were able to utilize technology in a synchronized way for each of our first re-entry folks, you would be amazed. And you look at, there's states that are doing this, there's different countries that are doing this. Why can't we? We should. Well, and I always hate saying why can't we, right? Because it makes it sound as if it's somebody else's problem, somebody else's issue. What I'm saying is we can do it, and we need to do it, and we need to be a part of this. The one other thing I want to talk about real quick is the healthcare analogy. As I mentioned, I was in healthcare for a number of years, and I always think about how when a patient comes out, let's say they have hip surgery or some issue that requires rehab, first of all, when they're just about ready to come out of the hospital, they have care that is designed to match what their experience and how they should be treated and seek treatment once they leave the hospital. Right? They're then given detailed instructions on what they can do and who to see, who to coordinate with, what doctors, physical therapists, others that can help them make sure that they don't come back into the hospital for the same thing. Man, wouldn't it be great if we just followed that same process, right? The healthcare analogy, that healthcare process with regard to our first entry folks. And it just seems like it's, and that's what's so frustrating. Right, the idea that there's models out there, it ain't nothing to do it, but to be about it and do it, right? So I think it's important for us to be okay with saying that, at least for me and other nonprofit agencies, to say we missed the mark on first entry. And it's not only important for me to admit it, but it's important for organizations, my organizations and others, to admit that we can do more. And it's not going to happen overnight. It isn't. We need to put in our sort of mile markers to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. Because the other worst thing we can do is change everything again, because we're not utilizing data or perspective of what good looks like, what success looks like. But in order for us to move forward on those mile markers, it's going to require us to listen. It's going to require us to learn. It's going to require us to support agencies who have been doing this for a long time. See the people around, right, around this session today, to follow where we should and possibly lead where we can. And in many respects, those platitudes I just said, how do we go about doing those things, right? Admitting that we need to change is the start. It certainly is. And so I'm happy that I was given this opportunity to sort of bare my soul on an issue that, frankly, I personally could have done more about and am professionally pledging myself to do more about. So I'd like to thank Perry and the First Entry Task Force for once again showing us how needed a new start is. I love the work that he does and what they do. I should also mention that I'm chair of the Human Service Advisory Council for Mercer County, for Mercer County. So in that capacity, I get to hear, listen, and be a part of the task force. And I just appreciate all that you do. And thank you for giving me a little bit of time here to talk about my work and the work at IOS, and to embarrass myself in front of you and tell you how much I still need to work on to be almost as good as you, Barry.
Thank you, John. Every time we have a conversation, I'm always finding myself having to take notes. And my hand hurts from taking so many notes, even though this is being recorded, because I feel like when you speak, it's like I'm watching a professor dissect things. And for you to come to this discussion and reveal yourself and to fully get naked and say, you know what, I could have done more. I think that by you saying that and breaking it down so we can understand why you felt that way is very important. And so I thank you so very much. And I look forward to continuing to work with you. And I look forward to seeing the great work that you continue to do, not just with IOS, because that's just one hat you wear. I really respect you so very much. And thank you for being a part of this process. So greatly appreciate that. I want to transition and move towards the end of our conference. I want to say thank you to everyone once again for joining us. And with this, I want to say that my mentor and one of John's mentors has beat it in our heads a long time ago that relationships precedes work. In addition, we've always been taught that when you have a great conference, a great gathering, a get together, that's good to have, but you just can't leave with that. You have to have a purpose that you leave with. You have to have something specifically called marching orders. And with that said, I want to make sure that we all understand the importance of serving returning citizens, because this is service. And with that being said, certain things we should be aware of, certain things we should be doing, and certain things we need to be honest about. So I just got 10 things, 10 quick things that we need to really just kind of tune into and focus on. When dealing with the population we serve, whether it's family, friends, loved ones, or the person who you don't even know, but this is the field that you chose to work in. Number one, take a breath. It can seem so overwhelming. I know for those who've been in this field for a good period of time, sometimes when you take a vacation, you're so worried about the people you serve and what they're doing, what's going on. It's hard for you to even breathe. Take a breath. If you're not physically able to do your job, you're no good to anyone or your family if you're not taking care of yourself. So take that breath. Number two, assess. Take an honest look at yourself. Take full stock and ask yourself, can I do more to assist in this cause? Number three, shameless plug. If you're not a partner of the First Entry Task Force, then drop us a line, drop your information in the chat form, or email us at taskforce@mercercountyreentry.org. We'll be happy to collaborate with you and work with you. Number four, if you are an agency or organization that continuously has an abundance of funds and resources, but not enough clientele to serve, then stop, reassess your outreach approach. Figure out how to directly go to those who you're expected to serve. Meet them where they are. Don't expect them to meet you where you are. You have to assess and say, how can we reach them better? What do we need to do better? Number five, once again, honesty again. Be honest. Make sure you're speaking to, collaborating with, and including, but not talking at returning citizens. If you haven't educated yourself about the real definition of social justice and what returning citizens face on a daily basis, then do so. Remember, empathy, not just sympathy. Empathy is being able to put yourself in that person's shoes, being able to understand what they're going through, not feeling sorry for them. They don't need your pity. They need your guidance, support, and help. Number six, employers. If you have a company that has a policy that's outdated and restrictive to the previously incarcerated and those with background issues, and if your company is not related or relevant to that person's specific charges, then be an ally. Figure out how you can lighten or change your policy. Some of your best and most valued future employees are those who are returning home from incarceration. Number seven, housing. All of us have to advocate for housing for the previously incarcerated, because we all know having a place to lay your head is your foundation. And for many of those individuals, they don't have that foundation. They don't have a place to lay their head. Are you aware that by the federal government standards, that housing authorities that receive funding from the federal government, there are only 2 charges that will prohibit them from living on a federal housing authority site that's federally funded. Those 2 charges are: 1, manufacturing of methamphetamines. Number 2, any charge of sexual nature, whether that's adult or child assault, sexual assault charge. Only 2. But still, there are housing authorities across America where it prohibits individuals who have charges other than those 2 charges from living on a federally funded housing authority facility. Number 8, political. I know for some this is tricky, but we're gonna be telling the truth right here like we always do. F, the politicians in your community, in your city, in your state are not allies to the previously incarcerated, push them to do so. Find out why they are not. Find out why they're being restrictive. And then have open and honest conversations. And if they are an ally, push them to do more, because it's never enough. Number 9, faith-based communities. We have an abundance of individuals in the city of Trenton, as far as Pastor Taylor, Pastor Boyer, Pastor Hernandez Granson, Pastor Armstrong, but we can always use more. We need more faith-based leaders at the table. We need you. As Governor McGree mentioned earlier, a lot of the red tape that he faces is not from the faith-based community or community in general, but we still need more. Number 10, and last but not least, egos. You got to check them. You got to check your egos at the door, because it's not about you. It's not just about your organization. It's about the community and the individuals who we're serving. I've been to many meetings where different organizations who are vying for the same monies don't want to work together because they're so focused on, well, if I'm going for this and they're going for this and they get this, I don't get this. What about the people they're serving? We have to focus on the population we serve. We have to get back to our core principles. And we've all made some mistakes. At the same time, every single day gives us another chance to try again and to do it better. Once again, thank you all for attending, and we look forward to working with you continuously. Thank you once again. Enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend.